Hey guys, welcome back to the Novastar Saber sessions. Again, I don't really have to introduce myself, and hopefully you've been listening to the other ones. If you haven't, go watch the rest of them. This is episode 7, and this time I'm going to start with pretty much only one subject, unless I ramble on to a second one, but this is going to have to do with costuming in general. So first of all, costuming is a complicated thing, but it can also be a very easy thing. It depends on how far you want to go. And I want to first start out by saying some of the most important things is you shouldn't let anyone limit how you go about your costuming. That is to say, there's really no necessity in you absolutely having to have screen accurate costumes for the work that you'll be doing. I mean, probably if you're even listening to me at all on this session, you're involved in saber combat. You are doing some kind of live performances, and it might involve a lot of fighting and or motion. You might be doing flips, you might be throwing kicks, you might be taking falls, and you might be doing things that would possibly be very, very destructive to an expensive costume, and especially one that's really fragile and has a lot of different moving parts and things that are maybe held together with very simple things that are meant to look good on screen, but also don't count when people use stunt costumes in the films. And that's kind of another thing about costuming is when people talk about things that are screen accurate, really it's quite arbitrary because, and I'm going to kind of get on a different level here really quickly as I talk about props. So for example, and again, this isn't a definitive way of saying things about props, but hear me out. You have props that are meant for very close-up shots. We sometimes refer to this as a hero prop. It has to look pristine and beautiful and awesome in every way. It doesn't mean the prop has to be new. It's possible that the prop is an archaic relic, so it has dents and scratches, but it means they're designed there very specifically, and they have to catch the light on camera and so forth. Then you have ones for medium shots. The prop doesn't have to be as detailed. It could even be made of a different material possibly, and you wouldn't know if it was painted properly and so on. In other words, this prop it needs to be detailed, it needs to look nice, but it doesn't have to be super, super, super crazy detailed. And then you have like stunt props, or props that are literally on the belt, as some people might say it for sabers, belt hangers, that aren't really seen, but they still need to have the general shape of the prop that it was the person is using, or wherever this prop belongs. It might actually be on a table, I don't know, it depends on the film and so forth. But again, hopefully you're getting the idea. And by the way, a stunt prop could even be made of rubber and you wouldn't know it because, again, reasons, because paint, because, well, reasons. So anyways, so what the hell does all that mean? Well, when people talk about screen accuracy, unfortunately, there isn't one definitive way of speaking about it because of the reasons I just mentioned. Props and costumes are made for specific shots, and sometimes they are not the same costume and they're not the same prop. Granted, that said, a lot of people will say, well, what we decide is we'll use what's used 80% of the time. I'm like, well, that's fine and all, but what if what's used during 80% of the fighting is entirely different from your version of what 80% of the time means? So it gets pretty complicated, and most off, I just want to say this. For me, there are 3 major concerns that I have to address. I have to address for staged combat work, and sometimes for film combat work, but anyway, here they are. Budget, functionality, and safety. That's really it. That's it. Budget, functionality, and safety. So what does that mean? Budget means, if I can get a prop that is going to work, or I should say also a costuming part, whatever, for $20 instead of $200, and they're pretty much going to be the same thing. I mean, sure, the $200 item will be, beautiful and everything, but if I can do it for $20 and it's passable, I'm going to do that. I just don't have an unlimited pocketbook, and again, even if I did, and I mentioned this in a different talk, I don't know if I'd waste my money on that. I would save it for other things. I could literally get another saber into a child's hands during an event instead of, saying I'm going to have a big trumped up costume. Then what was the second one that I was talking about? Functionality. So screen accuracy doesn't trump functionality for me. That is to say, if the item is going to be something that's functional, where, oh look, if I drop it, it still works. If I bend a certain way, or just, again, it's really dependent on what the concern is with the proper costuming part. But it's like, if it's functional and it really serves its purpose right, then I'm not going to be opting for the screen accurate version, which may be less functional, or possibly where people say, well, you can maybe drop this, but please don't, or please don't fall in this belt, because if you fall on the grass and it gets a little burned up and wrecked or something like that, then it's going to destroy the prop. So we don't want that. And then finally, of course, safety and comfort, really. So again, screen accuracy will not trump that in my eyes. That is to say, if I can put a performer in a position where their costuming makes them feel, say, less hot, as in temperature, not like, oh, you look hot, but, or they can bend their arms easier, they don't feel inhibited, I guess, or prohibited from moving, or like, what if they do a fall and part of their belt is just like jams into their hips because it's so hard or sharp and all that kind of stuff. You don't want any of that. So keep that in mind, that's, for me, again, screen accuracy does not trump safety and comfort. And to go on with this, just from taking the stunt fall that I took through the window on the set work of my live Empire Strikes Back performance set, the window that Luke crashes through, so myself as Luke and Gary Ripper as Vader, that was a thing. I needed to be concerned about that. I needed to be certain there was no real metal on my belt to harm me during the fall, no hard corners or pieces of hard leather on that very same belt that could jab into me or jam into my back and my ribs. And also it had to survive rehearsals and performances and doing that over and over. And also I had to protect the window, which sounds funny, but it's true. I needed to be able to land on parts of the window and not destroy those in the process with my belt. And none of this is possible or plausible with a very, very, very expensive costume, as breaking a small piece of a $2,000 costume is devastating. And again, it's possible that there's a lot of metal on it and you could hurt yourself with that costume doing a fall. Breaking off a small piece of a $150 costume, that's able to be mitigated, and it's somewhat expected, and it's especially so if the parts are soft, even if they're made to look not soft. That is to say, we've probably all heard that people can take EVA foam, I'm sure you've all heard of that, or any foam, whatever, and make it look like metal via paint. So keep that in mind. But hey, how about a quick story on my own failure to note my own safety? Well, briefly anyhow. But listen to this, you'll like this, and it definitely gave me some insight about how to protect myself with costuming better, and I don't know what I was thinking. Anyways, I was making my Luke ESB belt, okay, and for whatever reason, I had some metal, and I was like, hey, I could make the belt out of metal because I have this shiny piece of metal, and I could cut out this hexagon, which is kind of the shape of Luke's belt, is sort of this hexagonal thing. So again, long story short, I just decided, hey, the belt will be leather, but I'm going to put on this thing. Anyways, I was doing some training. I was testing the window out. I was doing some falls, and I was doing this all on my own. Gary wasn't even around for this part of the rehearsal or this rehearsal at all. Anyways, I'm lucky too. I wasn't wearing my costume shirt, because what happened is I did a fall and I cut myself. My belt it was not super sharp. I mean, obviously I didn't make it this horribly, jagged edge thing, but it was sharp enough that once I did my fall, I fell violently enough that it quickly punctured my stomach. Not badly, but it was enough where I was like, now this is ridiculous. It gave me a very good insight into not doing that. I used instead a mirror reflective piece of cardboard that no one could even tell. It looks like metal when you guys see it. If you saw it in person, you'd never know until you walked up to it and touched it or whatever. And so there you go. Like, I didn't learn my own lesson, or I should say I didn't even follow my own lesson for that particular moment, and it was a mistake. It was a mistake. I was just excited about going, hey, cool, I can make this out of metal. I might as well. Ooh, more screen accurate. And I just didn't really consider, uh-oh, this could be trouble. But after fixing that, there's a lesson. Anyhow, that's about 10 minutes, and I'm Novastar from SaberCombat.com. Have fun with your LED sabers.